OCA, Asian Pacific American Advocates, is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing the social, political, and economic well-being of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Based in Washington, D.C., with over 50 chapters around the country, we engage in issues like immigration, education, and fair treatment, among many others. We also provide resources and programs in order to build a pipeline of AAPI leaders so that our community can have a seat at every table.
Hey y'all, it's Keisha. OAC Greater Houston and I are going to be collaborating on this year's Lunar New Year. We're talking tarot, covering karma, and all things spiritual. If you want to book a session, check out our Eventbrite page from February 12th to February 27th. I'll see you there.
For the remainder of 2020, OCA Greater Houston's citizenship forums will be virtual. Please help us facilitate the process by filling out your application on Citizenship Works platform. Go online to citizenshipworks.org/portal/Houston and make sure to fill out all the information possible. If you have any questions, please email erica.chambers@ocahouston.org or call 281-968-9131 for the next steps. Make sure to fill out your application so you can join us online for the virtual visit.
Happy Lunar New Year. So in 2021, we want to continue showing our support to all of our artists from Starry Night Arts Fest in 2020. So today we have Terrence Tang's sweatshirt from his Humankind collection. To win this, you can tune into OCA Greater Houston's Lunar New Year programming, or you could visit his website at tinlinstudio.com to purchase it and support Terrence. All right, thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to Behind the Culinary Curtain, a live cooking event session with Debbie Chen. My name is Ria Santillo, pronoun she, her, hers. I'm an OCA coordinator, a part of the Arts and Culture Committee. I'm also a community organizer for the Filipinx community in Houston and also the co-president of UniPro Texas. But before I begin, I would want to introduce you to the rest of the team with me today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Trisha Morales. I'm also part of the Arts and Storytelling Committee with OCA Greater Houston, also a Filipinx organizer, community organizer here in Houston. I'm the Director of Marketing for UniPro Texas. And yeah, I pass it on to Maria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Duran, and I'm with OCA Greater Houston in marketing and program.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria and Trish. This programming is a part of OCA Greater Houston's Asian Restaurant Weeks. ARW was originally a month-long food dining experience featuring special priced Asian cuisine from Chinatown. Bel Air, Houston. Asian Restaurant Weeks aims to help visitors and locals appreciate the rich cultural heritage of Chinatown, Asiatown. Due to COVID-19, we have shifted our programming to the virtual space, but we're still exploring the intersections of food, art, and culture, and celebrating Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month through happy hour storytelling circles and through live cooking/baking events. So we get to know more about our AAPI bakers, chefs, and restaurant owners. In our happy hour storytelling circles, those conversations are centered around developing a community cookbook where we share recipes, our family stories, and just images that remind us of home and just comfort during this time. I hope everyone's ready. I can't wait to introduce our guest. I'm so honored to bring to the table Debbie Chen. Debbie wears so many hats, and she's going to be joining us from Shabu House in Bel Air. She is Debbie. Debbie is the Civic Engagement Programs Director of OCA Greater Houston, and she is the co-owner of Shabu House. I'm gonna leave it at that. Debbie, I would love for you to introduce, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you'll be cooking this evening with us.
Well, thank you for having me and twisting my arm into doing this. Shabu House is located in the middle of Chinatown, Asiatown. I grew up in this area. I'm from A-Leaf. We're in the middle of A-Leaf, and literally saw this entire area grow from grassland with cows when I first moved to Houston, and now it's this entire corridor of Asian businesses, right? And Shabu House serves hot pot and comfort food.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. I'm just so excited because this is another side of you everyone gets to see, because you're just in the trenches with our community and just supporting all of us, especially during this time. You're doing a lot of work. So thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm really excited. So what do we have? What are you showing us today?
Well, first I want to say thank you to all of you, right? And thank you for everyone who's watching this, and thank you to this team. You guys are so creative, and we've done so much in the community as a result of your dedication. So, thank you. It's been a real challenge for everybody in this time to move everything virtually and create content and that's meaningful. And so the food drive that we're doing, that's so important. We really want to provide food for people in our community who don't have access to the stimulus checks, people who may not have status. And then the food drive for meals, the meals for frontline workers, that is everyone from the healthcare industry to grocery store owners, grocery store workers, and it's a part of a bigger effort. So in all total, the community has already raised almost $150,000 as a part of our efforts. So I really want to thank everyone who's contributed to that, and thank everybody who's just sent us in checks directly. So today, we are going to make wontons. This is a favorite childhood food. My grandmother used to make this. I learned to make this since elementary school, really. And the ingredients are very basic. This is it's a basic Southern Chinese jiangzi style of making this, right? And every province in China, the Chinese diaspora and other Asian cultures all make some variation of this. And this is basically the version that my grandmother used to make as a base, and then you can add other things into it. So the ingredients are basically, we're going to start with 2 pounds of ground pork, and if you look at this, you'll see that it's different, right? 1 pound is basically lean ground pork, and 1 pound is regular fatty ground pork. My grandmother used to say, it doesn't taste good without fat. So,
that is absolutely true.
right?
My mom says the same thing.
It really does taste better with fat. I mean, there's a reason why people like pork belly, right?
Yes.
But you can, substitute this. You can make it with all lean. Okay. You can also substitute the fatty ground pork with soft tofu. Okay, to replace that. It's a healthier alternative, but it's still the texture of the soft tofu imitates the fat, and so it won't be dry like if you just had solid lean meat. So that's the trick.
Okay, you hear that, everyone? Soft tofu.
Yeah, and it cuts the calories and makes it healthier. Then I use 3 to 4 tablespoons of soy sauce. Sometimes, honestly, if it depends if you're going to fry it or if you're going to boil it. If you're going to boil it, and you prefer things a little saltier, you can add more tablespoons, like 1 or 2 more tablespoons. Frankly, this is a more fancier way of doing it because I shouldn't say fancier. It's more indulgent. Okay, soy sauce is more expensive than salt. Technically, you don't have to put as much soy sauce. You get the saltiness with just salt, right? But soy sauce has that extra flavor to it, so it's an indulgence to use more soy sauce, frankly. But because I would say my favorite condiment is probably soy sauce. I make it with more soy sauce. And then rice wine. Oh, and the soy sauce, you can also do variations. You can use regular soy sauce, and then you can also change it out and do a mix of dark soy sauce with light soy sauce or aged soy sauce. That also gives it a different nuance to the flavor.
And then, I'm sure it provides a lot of depth.
Yeah, but the soy sauce I use is Pon Lai soy sauce from Taiwan. That's my favorite soy sauce, right? It's very inexpensive. It comes in gallon jugs for like $8 or $9. It goes a long way. Then next we put in anywhere between 3 to 5 tablespoons of rice wine, and again, this is personal preference, right? Usually, if I do it, I'll put 3 tablespoons of basic rice wine. I usually use this brand. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. This is also a very cheap, basic brand, right? It comes also in gallon jugs. And then if you want to be indulgent, then you add either another tablespoon of, rice wine mijoto. It's like head wine. So it's like from the first press or something. It's a little stronger. It has a more nuanced flavor to it. You can also put in rose flavored rose wine. And then a lot of people use Shaoxing wine. Shaoxing, right? This is the one made in Taiwan, and then people, use this kind also. It's all personal preference. This is a little more similar to like adding, some sherry.
Ooh. Oh, I have a question. So, are there any like vegetarian tips you can provide when with the filling or
absolutely
vegetarian?
Right? And my grandmother and I, we like meat. It's probably my favorite meat next to a steak. But like what I said earlier about tofu, you can completely substitute this with tofu. There's also a way where you can make this Shanghai style, where it's majority vegetables and just a smidgen of meat, right? You can like mix it with like a quarter of the meat, and 75% is all veggies. You can also just make it all veggies and a mix of tofu, right? And tofu, you can use the soft tofu. You can also use harder tofu, and so it gives that more of a stronger texture.
Yes,
right? And then if you're going to make it, with tofu and vegetables, then what you do is you just add more soy sauce. You're going to definitely want to use salt. You might want to add in some white pepper. Some people may add in some chili oil or sesame oil just to have a little more savoriness to it, right? But once you cook it or deep fry it, you really can't tell. Especially when you deep fry it as a snack, because then you can like dip it in sauce, or you just dip it in hoisin or soy sauce or a thicker soy sauce paste. I mean, it's good either way.
Thank you so much. So I mean, there's a lot of like variation in terms of filling for these wontons, and it's so versatile as you mentioned. That was a question actually asked by Heidi Wong. So thank you, Heidi, for asking that question.
So we're going to get started here. right? So normally you want to, when you buy it from the grocery store, it comes in a bag, right? You go to an Asian grocery store, it's fresh right there. You tell them how many, pounds you want, and they will amazingly will just like take a plastic and grab it and pretty much get like fairly close to the amount that you want. They'll always do a little over the poundage because it's better for their sales, right? You want to break it open so that it saves you time. And then you just literally just pour everything in. Okay.
Wow. And I see you're mixing it with chopsticks this time.
I started off with chopsticks. My grandmother would just use chopsticks for the whole thing. I get a little lazy, frankly, and I want to save time. So I will usually do shortcuts. And once I get the initial things in, then I will switch to a fork because it'll just go faster. If you really want to be traditional about it, you would actually switch to your hands, right? Once everything is in, and then you're using your hands literally like a paddle and just mixing it. So I do that with meatballs, but for wontons, I'm okay with the shortcut of a fork.
And I see like how you're I see how you're mixing it. It's kind of like in a crisscross kind of.
I do. At the beginning, I do it as a crisscross. Once you put the egg in, though, and you're really trying to mix it well and for everything to gel together, then you should actually be stirring it in one direction. Even if you were mixing it with like your hands, right, you would still be going in one direction. Okay.
Okay.
So,
and
the
so
next,
how?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to show you this instead of having it, because I wrote in the instruction just like a full tablespoon. What does that actually look like? It's literally you just go in and just scoop. Okay.
Oh.
Normally you would, scrape off the top, make it even. I just do a whole scoop.
I mean, same with my mom. She's just eyeballing it and she doesn't measure anything. I think that's just the best way to go.
Yeah, it was actually hard for me because like normally I just take the thing and I'm just pouring, and then for some reason I just know where to stop. But for this, I had to like put it into measurements, and I've actually been working on that to do that for different recipes to begin with, because my grandmother made everything. She would just eyeball it, and so now I'm having to go back and do test batches with Western measurements to try and actually measure out the right amount so that, my niece and nephew, they'll actually have recipes to be able to use in the future. Okay.
And what do we have in the bowl right now already? Or what are you?
Right now is just soy sauce, rice wine, just plain rice wine, and some cornstarch. Now we're going to throw in the scallions. Okay, and this is all personal preference, right? You can put scallions. Some people will like mince up celery. You can do it with chives. It's all personal preference.
Yeah, and this is for flavor and texture.
Yes, this gives flavor. It also, the rice wine mixed with the green onions like this, the scallions, it gets rid of any of the xingwei, which is like the fleshy smell.
In one of the story circles, one of the participants, she shared that a lot of her family is growing like Chinese chives. So is that just scallion or is that Chinese chives?
Every other cookbook I read or hear different people talk, some people say it's scallions. I'm translating literally from Chinese, right? So it's just like green onions to me. But then people say it's actually scallions. I've also had people say they're chives. I think it depends on where you come from.
Oh, okay.
All right. Now then, one egg, pre-cracked. Just put it in. Okay. And now I get lazy and I literally just start mixing it with a fork. And you really want to coat it. If you have maybe 3 pounds, like this is 2 pounds, right? If you had 3 pounds, you could get away with putting 2 eggs in it. If you're making this vegetarian, then you would probably put, the extra rice wine in to mix with the tofu, and depending on the type of tofu that you're doing, so that you want to be able to for that liquid, you would put in extra cornstarch. Now, traditionally, you're actually supposed to use tapioca starch, but when I was a kid, you know, we were growing up in Lincoln, Nebraska. I didn't move to Houston until I was 11. And so you could not buy tapioca starch in Lincoln, Nebraska. You used cornstarch, which is essentially, it's a starch. It works the same way. Okay. And so you just kind of mix everything up. And then you want to put this in the refrigerator for at least an hour. You know, 2 hours would be even better, but at least an hour so that everything really gets to sink in and it melds together really well. All right. So that was just my sample to show you. Okay. Usually you would actually mix this to be a lot more even. I would probably be mixing this about maybe 10 to 15 minutes. The trick with the fork is because there's 4 prongs, you're able to really break the meat apart. You're able to really mix the fat and the lean meat together so it's very even. Okay.
Oh, this looks so good. I'm really excited.
Okay. And so we actually have another one that's pre-made. And the reason I use this bowl, right? This is a rice cooker pot. Okay, you don't need to have some special bowl. I mean, it's great. You know, a lot of people have mixing bowls, right? But if you don't, you just use your rice cooker pot. I mean, that's literally what my grandmother did, right? We were, you know, my parents were graduate students. They were living on scholarship money. You know, when they first started out, you know, they didn't have a lot, right? And so we were very practical. We would just use what was there. And I would say that goes to why did I choose this, right? My grandmother was a really creative person, and she was very, very practical. And she would just figure out ways to like use anything, you know. So like I cracked the egg already pre this show. My grandmother, when I was a kid, she would take that egg. She wouldn't just crack it in half. She would take the egg and like poke a little hole in it on one side, and then like shake all the egg out, right? And so then you would have an eggshell practically whole. You go wash that out, and then once it dried, my grandmother would take like scrap paper, old Christmas wrapping paper, used wrapping paper, and cut shapes out of it, and somehow would make it into like a little chicken, you know, or little animals using eggshells.
That's awesome. Like she uses everything.
Yeah. So this is a pot that, you know, I'd already made earlier. Okay. That's already pre-mixed. It's already been, you know, marinated in the fridge for a couple hours. This is actually my grandmother's pot. It's very old. It's very beat up from a very, very old Datong brand rice cooker that I haven't been able to like throw out because I feel like, well, it's still perfectly good. It's still perfectly useful. And I'm reminded of my grandmother when I use her stuff.
Yes. I think the very act of like, you know, creating this dish again, like is a way of like honoring her and remembering, and even you like using the pot, like I'm sure all those like other flavors are kind of like, you know, contributing to this new batch of filling and stuff. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So you have your filling, right? Whether it is purely meat-based, whether it is vegetarian. Oh, one tip about the vegetarian. You would actually take, let's say if you're using cabbage, okay, just regular cabbage, or you're using baby bok choy, and you mix maybe 75% of that is baby bok choy and then 25% with another vegetable. It could be spinach, it could be anything really. You want to blanch it first. You basically you boil some hot water, you just kind of very quickly blanch it so it's like half cooked, okay? And then you take it on, put it on a chopping board. Well, actually, you first put it into ice water, cool it off, lift it out, and then you chop it up, like literally mince it really well, and then take your hands and just squeeze all the water out of it, and then put that in to mix with your tofu and all that, so that it's not soggy, all right? So it basically gets rid of all the excess water. Okay, and then you want to save that water actually because you've just squeezed all the juice out of it. That can be used towards the soup.
Yep.
Okay, now wonton wrappers. This is the other great thing about wontons. You could make the wrappers from scratch yourself if you wanted to. that would take a lot of time and frankly a lot of skill that I personally don't have to roll it perfectly evenly. Like if I was making a tom yum, I could do that, but to make perfectly thin skin, you know, that really takes practice and skill. I don't have that. There are two types of skin typically for wonton wrappers. One is it's a little thicker, and I got the thicker one. I'm used to eating the thicker one for the same price. This is partially a personal thing. It's a budget thing also. For the same price, right? It goes by weight. You get a certain amount of a certain number of pieces. Okay, the thicker wrapper gives you more versatility. You can use it for boiled wontons, but you can also use it to deep fry, right? So when you make this, you can like set it out on a plate, saran wrap the plate, and then pop it in the freezer, and you have an instant stack. When it's, you know, when it's frozen, you just pick them all off and put them into Ziploc bags based on however many you personally eat per meal, whether it's 5 or 10, right? And so you just have something ready to go for a quick meal. Midnight, you don't want to drive out, nothing's open. You can just cook something very quickly and easily. That's why I choose the thicker wrapper. The thinner wrapper is really only good for boiled wontons.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, it comes out, it's really pretty, right? It comes out nice and light and cloudy, airy, right? And it's a totally different texture, but from a more practical level, honestly, I would suggest get the thicker ones.
Okay.
Yeah, it just gives you more versatility. There's multiple ways of wrapping these things, okay? And most people, right, when they wrap them at home, usually they're gonna use water. Using egg is a trick that some restaurants use. So typically, right, you can put meat into wontons, I would say like 3 different ways. Either, you know, a really small amount, something like this, okay, where you're, especially if you're using the thin kind, where you're making a small wonton that has a lot more skin, okay? And that kind, if you boil it, and you would put different spices, obviously, you would basically make it so that you boil it. It's not a soup one. You scoop it out and you mix it with this hot chili oil sauce type of thing to make salsa. It's a Sichuan style. And so you don't have a lot of meat in that, okay? Now you notice the way I just made this, I folded it into a triangle, all right? And then I put another dab at the end. You folded it so that it looks like a little doll's head with a bonnet, right? A little face and a bonnet. My grandmother was very particular about these. Whether you were making it with a small amount of meat or if you were making it with a lot of meat, every single one had to be identical. And I used to get really frustrated with that. Like, you're just going to eat it, right? My mom was like, who cares how it looks? You're just going to boil it. You're going to fry it. You're just going to eat it. It's all going to end up in your stomach. What difference does it make? My grandmother, being the artist that she was very much like, it's about the process, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to spend the time to make it, then make it well. And you want it to be presentable. And you're not just eating it. It is an act of love to make food, to spend time to make it well and make it pretty and presentable. It's just a completely different type of feeling that comes off of it.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you. When my mom, I cook with her as well, but I think in terms of like the wrapping process, in our culture, we have like turon, which is like this dessert with plantain, and sometimes we put like jackfruit in as well, and sugar. Yeah. And there's a way we wrap it so that it's sealed, but also has like enough room for it to kind of like cook inside, and it's in terms of like precise wrapping. My mom's
all
very
the air out. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm using this finger to prop it up so it has the bonnet, and then you use your thumbs to push down and roll forward so that you have like the little bonnet. Now this one, you notice, is fuller. It has more meat. And this is typically you do this at home because doing it this way takes more time, okay? And my grandmother, when she made this with chopsticks. She wasn't using a butter knife like I am. I actually learned this butter knife trick from a friend in the restaurant industry many years ago because it was so much faster, right? And especially like Cantonese style. I mean, they were just like a little smidge of meat on it, and then they would just scrunch it up into a cloud shape and not deal with folding at all. And that works really well with like shrimp wontons.
Oh, I see, I see.
Okay, but I find using a butter knife is not so much because it's faster, so much as it's easier to like shape it into the perfect size to be consistent. Simply because I don't have the same chopstick skills as my grandmother, who could basically pick up each time and it would be the same amount, and I could never do that. So this one, you'll note, I just dabbed the top. I did not seal the sides, right? And this is what my friend would do in a restaurant. And this is why they would use egg instead of water. Water, everything will fall apart when you boil this. But if you just dab 2 parts of egg, when you boil this, it still won't fall apart. And so then you would save time not having to like seal every edge.
Yeah, it has a stronger like binding quality.
And so because I'm not an expert in this, and I would say, you know, most people who are cooking at home are not experts, right? You just want to make something that's tasty, that's quick and easy. Shortcuts always help. So that was the triangle shape. And I'm going to make one other shape. Especially when you're making the vegetarian ones, then you can put a lot more meat. I usually make the vegetarian ones with a lot more meat. So the other way of doing it is making it into a rectangle instead of a triangle. Okay. Now I've seen people where all they do is they just fold it over in half, especially the vegetarian ones, and they just smush the meat so it's flat. Okay. And then they just take that and just deep fry it just like that. That's probably the easiest. That would not be pretty if you were boiling it. I highly recommend only do that if you are going to deep fry it. Okay. It makes a quick and easy appetizer, frankly. But the way we're doing it, you fold it this way, you fold it in half, and then you're just going to take it, you're going to push this up so you also have the little doll's head, and then you're just going to dab at the ends here. So now you have it like that.
Wow.
And this one, this style is the one that's easier to do if you're putting a lot more meat. Like you could put meat so that it practically fills the whole edges, especially the vegetarian ones. It's really great for deep frying. You get this big stuffed pocket of like meat and vegetables or just purely vegetables.
I really like how you're demonstrating like the different styles and like highlighting like which one works best, especially with the vegetables, especially for my vegetarian vegans out there. I do want to talk and ask you if this will be in the community cookbook in the near future.
It will. And I think that's one of the reasons why we chose this. Let's see, from the picture, I think you can see this is a plate, right? You can use any plate, just saran wrap it. Okay, so I think you can see the saran wrap. So you saran wrap it, and then when you put the wontons on, you just put them so that they're spaced apart. Don't have them touch each other. And then you just literally put these in your freezer. It takes about an hour to freeze solid, and then you just pull each one off and bag them. And they last a long time.
Oh, that's good to know.
So in the cookbook, we will definitely put all the different variations, and even more importantly, to have like different types of sauces or different types of combinations that you can do for the soup. Some people will have more resources or have more time, and they'll like make a bone-based broth, or they'll make a chicken broth and then put the wontons in that. The most economical way, right, is the water that you use to boil the wonton, don't toss that out. That's such a waste. You know, all the flavor of the meat, the vegetables, all those nutrients are going into the water that you just boiled them in, right? So that is already a really great soup base. Okay, this is going to take a couple minutes to boil here, and then we'll just boil some.
All right. Well, thank you, Debbie. Go ahead.
Significance of these, there's, like I said, there's like 6 different ways of wrapping these. I typically wrap these 2, primarily because these are the 2 that my grandmother wrapped the most. And I was always trying to get mine to be as good as hers, to be as uniform. Yeah.
And I think you did an amazing job, like just replicating the 2 styles. And I think that, like I mentioned before, in doing that same style and the same process again, kind of revive, like that memory still like is there. So one last question before I hand it off to Trish, because I know she has more questions for you. Is there a particular memory that you have of your grandmother, you know, when creating these wontons? I just wanted to ask.
You know, when we were doing our like practice run, I had to really control myself not to like start.
Oh,
I really miss my grandmother, right? This is my maternal grandmother and my my paternal grandmother. They made these differently, different styles. The main thing with this is it's very versatile. You can put any kind of stuffing in it. It's just the most traditional is you use, you know, pork, right? But especially when you make the vegetarian ones, you can use whatever's in your fridge. You can add different seasonings to make it differently. Like you can make this with potatoes, okay? You can make them use this, and so they're almost like, I don't know, a Chinese version of samosas with mashed potatoes in it. You can make it with cabbage. You can make it with tofu. When I think of these, I think of my grandmother's, you know, creativity and how she was able to use the same things and make so many different tasty dishes out of it. And so you didn't feel like you were deprived, right? When I was in elementary school, we were really on a tight budget. We lived in, you know, low-income housing. And this is in Lincoln, Nebraska. You know, everybody around you, everyone's on a tight budget. I think because my grandmother and on both sides, you know, went through the Civil War and, you know, went to Taiwan, and where everybody was poor, right? It really showed that creativity, and she was practical at the same time. But somehow she made everything just seem richer. And you didn't. It's only in hindsight I look back and I'm like, oh, actually we were kind of poor. I didn't realize that not everybody saved every single plastic container, right? Apparently, mostly immigrants do that.
Yes, I do. Yep. We saved like, everything.
Practical, you know.
Everything.
Saved everything. You know, rubber bands. Rubber bands became rubber band jump ropes. You know. I never felt deprived. It's only in hindsight that I look back and I'm like, oh, you know, but it was because my grandmother was just a very creative and practical person. She was super efficient. And she was the person who really encouraged me to be creative, right? She really, if you were willing to learn, she would teach you. Yeah.
And I think that really shines through in like who you are, because like you do like advocate for creativity and the arts and you know the resourcefulness also when we work with you, like that like a little how you talk about your grandmother, a lot of it's reflected in you and your work. So I really appreciate you like telling us more the backstory of like why wontons and why that means so much to you. And I think, you know, that's such an important thing to tell everyone in the community at this time, because it's just like, now that we're home and it's just the food, that one thing, that one memory that kind of brings us together, right? And all these like sensory things that bring us back, and that's so important.
It's visual. You know, that's why she cared about, if you're going to do it well, make sure everything looks nice, because you're putting in, it's the same amount of effort, right, to wrap it. It's the same amount of time. Actually, it gets better if you become faster if you do it a lot. But it's, you know, it's kind of one of the reasons why we're doing this community cookbook, right? To document the stories of, you know, our team and the AAPI community here in Houston, things that people are doing in this time, supporting, you know, AAPI artists, right? It's also, you know, if you are getting food from a food bank, right, you're pretty much limited to what's being donated, right? And what is the most bang for the buck. And so vegetables that you're probably going to get are going to be things like, you know, cabbages or carrots, potatoes, right? These are staple foods, but it's also because they last longer. You know, Napa cabbage lasts longer versus, you know, some other vegetables, right? Leafy vegetables don't last as long. That's just the reality. And it's so much cheaper.
Guys, the ticker down there, if you're watching, oh, it kind of disappeared. But yes, the Happy Food Distribution. So that's going to be happening June 6th. I know we mentioned it earlier, but like what Trish said, if you're in need of groceries, please come by June 6th, and please register via Eventbrite. And again, you can use this recipe with whatever you receive then. And
please register, and you know, if you can afford it, please donate, right? A 50-pound bag of rice, a good brand, is $30. You can get it for as low as, you know, $20 to $25 too, right? But 50 pounds will feed a family of 4 for 3 weeks, sometimes even 4, depending on how you cook it. So the water's boiling. I'm going to dump these in as we keep talking.
Awesome.
So, you know, going back to why this and the cookbook, we're going to be collecting, you know, different recipes that can be made very versatile with very basic ingredients that are cheap and easy to make and taste good.
How long are we going to boil this for?
So another shortcut, right? Most people will tell you, start with a pot of cold water and bring it to the boil. I frankly will almost always start with just hot water to begin with. If you have one of those like boiling hot water makers, you just put boiled water in it already. It's already hot. That cuts out at least 5 to 10 minutes of waiting for the water to properly boil. And then it's harder to show because this is like a small pot for a demonstration, but like if you were actually on the stove, you would let it boil to it kind of is almost going to like pour over, and then you would take a cup of cold water, right? So every time it looks like it's about to boil over, you pour some cold water into it and it'll simmer down, and then you let it, you know, boil up again. And by doing it with the cold water, it serves two purposes. One, it helps to keep the skin a little more chewy, or a QQ, that kind of texture, okay? And because we're using thicker skin, we're not using the really thin skin. So the thin skin will become really, really translucent. And if it's folded in the other style, it'll be very fluffy. Okay, and especially if you're making it for salsa, you don't have a lot of meat and stuff on it, so you really want to have that skin. It's floating there. It's actually really pretty when you watch it. It's like little clouds in the water, you know.
I like how that action, like you find joy in that action. Actually, so Trisha's popped in, and she has. I'm gonna go ahead and toss it off to her because I know she has more questions for you, Debbie. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you guys a little later.
Hi, Debbie. So since it is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, kind of wanted to ask you a little bit more about your own story. So how does this dish tie into your immigration story?
I would say similar to what I said with Ria is that this is a very, very easy dish, and it's a really cheap dish that you can make, right? And you can make it in quantity. You can make it in quantity and freeze it so that it saves you time later. So at any time you just don't have time to cook or make anything, you can just pop this out of the freezer and just boil it, right? If you are, craving something after school and you want a snack, this is like a really indulgent snack, frankly, to, deep fry. Don't deep fry and try it at home if your parents or adult is not there supervising you. For that, only use the microwave, not on wontons, but other things.
And I know that you
pour water in here and then let it reboil. You do this about 2 or 3 times, and then you'll see that it's totally translucent, and then it's pretty much done.
All right. So you mentioned your grandma a lot. Is there any other influences in your life that help as far as cooking goes and owning the Shabu House restaurant?
My mom, who's actually not a cook, and my dad. My dad is actually a pretty good cook, right? And he is also just a very talented and creative person. And every time I ask him to, I actually started just videotaping him when I see him, and he'll be like, "Why are you doing this? There's no rule to how I'm doing this. You add and pour whatever you feel like doing, right? You're creating. There's no set recipe." But he does point out that I use too much soy sauce, and I should be using salt because salt is a much cheaper flavoring than soy sauce, to not be quite so indulgent. My mom is actually not a great cook. And so because my mother was not a great cook, and my mom was, really busy, right? My mom was working. She first went to school, then she was working, 2 different jobs. And so my grandmother was there to take care of us. And so, but my mother is someone who really firmly believed in supporting my creativity, right? Like, my dad once, did you ever have a Barbie doll, right? Like, my dad went and bought this, it was supposed to be this great surprise. It was this 3-level Barbie doll house, and it had a little thing that you pull on a string, and it's only bigger, right?
Okay,
my mom
wow.
was like, "You spent how much money buying this?" And she basically wouldn't let me open it, took me down to the department store to return it. But the department store had a display that was open so you could play with it and see how it worked, right? And she proceeded to point out to me that this thing is just made of cardboard. It is cardboard with something that somebody else, they just printed it on a machine so that it's a picture of what a room looks like, and it's a picture of the furniture. But you are more creative. We can go and get cardboard for you. You can cut it yourself, and you can draw and design your own house for your own dolls, right? There's no need to waste money when you are perfectly talented to be able to create and make something yourself.
Wow.
And that's how my mother presented it, right? And she let me basically take all the gift wrap, any piece of paper around the house, or gift wrap, even brand new gift wrap. We saved, we reuse gift wrap. We had a box of reused gift wrap, but she let me use the brand new gift wrap because it was just to prove a point.
So as far as Shabu House goes, is there any special family recipes at Shabu House that people can order?
I make my grandmother's meatballs, and I put that on the menu here at Shabu House. Shabu House, all of their sauces are made from scratch, right? So our sesame sauce is very popular, our chili sauce or spicy chili sauce, all of our soups, everything is made from scratch. We're actually the only hot pot place that does that. We don't take, pre-powdered mix. We're not, just getting sauce out of a can and putting it out there. We actually really care about using high quality ingredients and making it from scratch. So you can tell the difference by the taste. Now, I just want to point out something. These are done. Okay.
Awesome. Okay.
And so now you can see they're all fluffy.
All right.
So this is a part where everybody does it differently, right? I eat it very simply because that's how I grew up as a kid, where I would just put some, extra chives in here, maybe a dash of, some soy sauce, maybe some sesame oil, right? Some people, right, not putting, I like to use the black sesame oil. It's a little more fragrant, but some people, they'll make their own other sauces. There are some people who will mince celery. Some people will put a mix of chives and minced garlic, some sesame oil, and then they'll actually use a different soup base. I feel like you've just cooked everything in this hot water, and so you already have a soup base made with the seasonings that are already in your filling. So it's a waste to throw this water away, right? Because it's already a basic soup. The key is then all the different spices. You can put salt. Some people put some pepper, and then you're just using this to add the seasoning,
Wow.
right? And that's actually what restaurants do.
Yes.
Especially if you're getting like
Yes.
wonton noodles. Some people just eat wontons. I'm used to just eating it with just wontons, but you can actually put, egg noodles and then add different wontons. Another way is you can take an egg and like the leftover egg at the end that I had used to seal the wrappers. I would actually take that, put a pan, and then make it into like a flat, egg skin omelet, right? It's just flat, very, very thin. And then you take that, you roll it, and then you slice it. You are essentially slicing it into slivers, but it's easier when you roll it and then you slice. And then you add that in here. It's really good too.
That
So
looks
that way you have
delicious.
no waste, right? There's no reason to waste any of it. And at the same time, you have a tasty meal and there's no reason to feel deprived because you used really basic, simple ingredients, but it's actually really natural and very healthy. And quite filling with less calories.
That looks amazing, Debbie.
Thank
you
you.
so much for making this for us, and having folks also get the ingredients to make this. And like you said, a lot of these ingredients are easily available in stores.
Very basic.
Yes, I think one thing for me that I always, when it comes to food, it's always a communal act for me. So a lot of my food memories are with a group of people all the time. It's always with people. And that's the most beautiful thing for me when it comes to food, those memories of having it with, whether it's your grandma or mother or just friends.
Yeah.
So again, kind of want to tie it back into a couple of our events upcoming. Next week on June 6th, we're going to have a happy food drive through food distribution in Bel Air at Bush Elementary. So please, if you guys are available, please join us and also share this with everyone in the community, because I feel like at this point, a lot of people need help as far as food goes. So yes, please register. I'm sharing my screen right now.
Yeah. And we're doing it every month, right? And our goal is we're doing it every month between now and Lunar New Year of next year. And so families that register, right? If they need food now, they're probably going to need food later this year too. So once they register, they'll have the opportunity to select, hey, we want to be able to collect food for X number of months. And so we're starting out with trying to have enough food for 500 families, and we will grow that number probably much more significantly by the end of the year. There's really a lot of people that just need help and food security. And so I really encourage anyone, if you can afford it, $100 will go a long ways towards helping a family be able to eat for 3-4 weeks with that, and being able to supplement that with what the base amount that the Houston Food Bank is able to give. But the Houston Food Bank doesn't get donations of 50-pound bags of rice. They don't get donations of rice wine. They don't have donations of white pepper or peppercorns or sesame oil, right? bags of sugar or salt. Like they just don't get a lot of those type of, basic Asian cooking things, vinegar, right? So what we hope to be able to use with the money raised is to be able to help buy those type of seasoning staples so that they can make a lot of different things. And we are going to be providing a lot of different recipes in the cookbook that we're talking about to help families be able to make tasty, affordable Asian dishes that will really stretch the food that they're able to have.
Yes, and please don't forget to register. Here's the Eventbrite link, June 6th, happyfoodfair.eventbrite.com. And speaking of the cookbook, we're actually having a story circle tomorrow to discuss it even more. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. in a private Zoom link, actually. So if you guys are available, here's my screen. It is it's a happy hour tomorrow, but we'll be specifically discussing how you can get your family's recipe into this book and how we're going to print it and all that stuff. And yeah, thank you again, everyone. Debbie, did you have anything as far as the wonton recipe? Any suggestions with the sauces?
Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you guys for twisting my arm to do this. Everyone who's watching, please fill out the census. Please register to vote. If you know anyone who needs citizenship assistance, please refer them to us. Help us, raise money and do good work for the community and help our people. Thank you.
Oh, hi everyone again. I just kind of want to open it. Oh, can I open it up just for a few seconds for like Q&A from the audience if they have any questions for Debbie?
Yes. Does anyone in the Facebook or YouTube world have questions for Debbie? Cindy Sue says thanks.
Thank you.
Ooh. I think Debbie answered this already. Did you?
Different shapes actually do have different meanings, right?
Oh.
Usually, the triangle one is to imitate the shape of an ingot. Okay, so like I do the folded over at the ends, so it's like a little bonnet. But you can there's a lot of people who actually fold it and they just put the two triangles to meet together, right? Mm-hmm. The other kind, especially when you stuff it really full, right? The other fold, it literally looks like a little gold ingot. Well, if you could, imagine it was gold color.
Wow.
And for those who don't know what an ingot is, what is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a traditional. Basically, it's Chinese money. It's really, old. It's basically a nugget of gold shaped in a specific shape. So, like, you might see candy shaped like that, like chocolate candy shaped like that at Lunar New Year. Mm-hmm. They'll sell that in the grocery stores. Yeah, it's all about prosperity.
Thank you so much for that question, Millie. I really appreciate it. It's nice to know the significance of each shape. Anyone, Win, that's not a kitchen in the background. She's cooking on the table at Shabu House, Win. Anyone else have any questions for Debbie?
Yeah, I don't think you would want to see the messiness of the kitchen. I'm not sure. We actually thought about it, but then we were like, how on earth would we be able to put my laptop to like be able to do this camera thing? And even the other one, it's an iPhone on a tripod. I'm actually really amazed with technology these days.
Ooh, Millie has a question. She goes, this is a great way to get kids involved in the cooking process. Support healthy eating habits, hide vegetables. What's your favorite greens to add?
These are awesome questions.
Bok choy or chives, right? One of the thoughts I had and when I say chives, I mean jiutcai. And I say jiutcai because typically you would actually eat that with dumplings, okay? I am not good at making dumplings. In like you can buy store-bought dumpling skin, but that kind really doesn't taste as good, right? It's the hand-rolled, dumpling skins, but that takes skill that I know how to do it, but I'm super slow. The people who are really good at it, they make it really fast. So typically that is the vegetable that you associate with dumplings. But it actually, you can make it with wonton skins also. And why that one? Because that stuff grows like grass. Okay. Like literally, if you plant some, it's just never ending and it grows. And it can grow to be really old, right? Because typically you want to eat it when it's young and it's very tender, and you take that and you stir fry it with eggs, or you just stir fry it directly. But when it's older, you don't want to throw it out, right? You don't want to waste it. Then what do? You mince it and chop it up, and you mix it with meat, or you mix it with tofu, and you put it into wontons, or you put it into, dumplings, and then freeze it. And then the texture will be fine. It'll taste great.
Thank you, Millie, for that question. Wynn has a question. Where's your cooking background come from, Debbie?
All my grandparents. My dad has a few dishes he really likes to make, but it's all my grandma on my mom's side and my grandma on my dad's side. My grandmother on my dad's side, she used to make these with a mix of daikon radish, like minced daikon radish with
I love
tofu.
daikon. Yes. I'm actually growing daikon right now in my garden, or in my pots. It's great. Okay, so Cindy Sue says, my mom used water chestnuts and black mushrooms.
Yep.
I like to add watercress and ginger. Ooh, ginger. Ooh.
Yeah, water chestnuts are really great, right? My grandmother on my mom's side is Hubei. And so Hubei, you're known for the pork filling with minced water chestnuts. You use that for pearl balls, but you can actually use that with wontons. And then you're right, it tastes really great. You can put black mushrooms in it, shiitake mushrooms. The dried shiitake mushrooms are better. They're more savory. They're more flavorful.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions in the chat? If not, Debbie, did you want to say anything else as far as whether it's for OCA Greater Houston programming or Shabu House opening? I think something that was not mentioned was next week we're having a boba bursting bubble tea.
Shabu House is sponsoring super discounted bursting boba tea and shrimp chip snack packs for Happy Fest. Right, so Happy Fest starts on June 4th. So come by and get your drink and snack pack and go home and enjoy some movies.
Yes.
Please watch and support Asian American movies.
It's next week, guys. It's starting June 4th, and it's virtual. It's our first time ever doing a virtual film festival. So please join us.
Our 16th anniversary. So, thank you to everyone for supporting. And we'll probably be screening more films throughout the year. But just a big thank you to everyone for supporting the AAPI community.
Yes. Can we bring in Ria and also shout out to Maria? Can you also show your face since you were the director behind the scenes of the screens? And yes,
absolutely.
Shout out to Maria.
Yeah, Maria does some magic in the back. So she's awesome. She's amazing. And I just want to say thank you again, everyone who came out, who listened in, who even took the time to also cook with Debbie. And again, this is just an amazing space to share our stories, right?